Welcome, everybody, to the Bitch Slap, the Accelerated Path to Peace podcast, your daily reminder to not take yourself too seriously. And what was the other thing? Yes, to remind you that you barely know what's best for yourself, let alone anybody else. So cut everybody some slack, would you? Continuing with the theme of the Tools for a Good Life Summit interviews. This is the Tools for a Good Life Summit interview with the wonderful Amy Tran. You can find Amy Tran, Amy at doodledwellness.com to email her and see her Instagram at doodledwellness. On Instagram at doodledwellness, she has upwards of 200,000 followers. And let me find my notes quick. So Amy Tran covers the little t trauma, normalizing men asking for help, checking in, etc. She helps us sort out our inner core beliefs. Her steps are become aware of what we are thinking, identify the patterns, see our core beliefs, and change. Her favorite quote, "Awareness is the first step towards healing." This interview with Amy is awesome. I learned so much and was just so enlightened. Listen, enjoy, and of course, go to toolsforagoodlifesummit.com to register for the Tools for a Good Life Summit for free. Everybody enjoy the interview. Welcome back, everybody, to the Tools for a Good Life Summit. And I would like to welcome Amy Tran, M.A. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone.
Awesome. And quick, I'm going to read your bio and then we'll get down to the fun, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. So Amy is a doctoral student studying clinical psychology in Ontario, Canada. She has received intensive training to provide therapy as well as diagnose mental health disorders and autism in children and adolescents. She has trained in community mental health centers, hospitals, and private practices across Ontario. You are also involved in research that examines how the use of smartphones and tablets by young children and parents may disrupt the healthy development of children. Before committing to become a psychologist, you studied visual and creative arts, and your Instagram account at Doodled Wellness is where your passion for mental health and art come together. And I do want to say that your Instagram account is freaking awesome. I just brings a smile to my face, and I love everything about it. And was one of the ways I tracked you down. But let me continue before we get to that.
Thank you.
Indeed. You draw doodles on social media and create workbooks to make mental health resources and information more accessible to everyone. You're very successful at that. Amy's goal is to raise awareness about mental illness, combat stigma, share helpful coping skills, invite you to practice mindfulness, and brighten your social media feed with a daily pick-me-up. And you will be completing your residency in Toronto next year, correct?
Yes. Well, next year, academic year, but this year, September 2021, I'll be off to internship. Gotta check my pulse.
And then once you graduate, you hope to continue working with youth, integrating mindfulness into mental health treatment and advocating for more accessible mental health treatment.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Again, welcome to the summit. And when I look over here, everybody, I'm just looking at your Instagram feed. Again, Doodled Wellness. And you have managed to compile 154,000 followers. Does that surprise you?
It really does. I mean, even just hearing you say that number out loud is like, what, really? Like my account? So it is surprising. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what's really cool about it too is there's a humbleness within it. there's a humbleness within your doodledwellness.com, your main web page. So I love
Mm-hmm.
that. I think there's so much stuff to talk about there. I like your most recent post, childhood trauma. Again, I'm just looking over here, so I apologize.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes, childhood trauma can also be dot dot dot. Um, and being in my young 50s and perhaps earlier in my 40s, being an A-type male, like a hard charger and all this, if
Mm-hmm.
I heard the word trauma, my brain would think, I don't have trauma, or that's only this over here. But
Mm-hmm.
that's not true, it turns out. Maybe you could speak to that for a
Yeah,
second.
no, I'd love to. Like, I agree. I think most people, when they think about trauma, they think about what we call big T trauma, right? Catastrophic accident, natural disaster, abuse or neglect. And of course, those things are very, very traumatic. But I think also love is something that all humans want and crave and need. And especially as a child, right? When you're in that vulnerable state, who do you depend on to receive love and to have your needs met? Well, the answer typically would be, your parents, so mom and dad, right?
Yeah.
But you can have an amazing relationship with mom and dad. They can provide you with food, shelter, warmth. But when there are certain dynamics that play out where you feel like you can't express how you're feeling, you can't share your thoughts, you have to be a certain way to gain approval, love, or validation, then that's traumatizing because you are betraying who you really are, right?
Mm.
And when we're younger, we don't have the mature brain to be able to say, well, maybe mom and dad are just having a bad day, or maybe mom and dad were never modeled how to cope with my emotional needs.
Mm.
Instead, this small infant brain is like, there's something wrong with me, right?
Mm. Yeah.
And that core belief gets internalized and carries on throughout adulthood. And that's traumatizing, right? To
Yeah.
feel like we don't deserve love or cannot receive love unless we're certain people.
Mm, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it is traumatizing, and yes. So hiding your true self by fear of disapproval, and to carry that habit into adulthood, right? Denying your needs to be strong for your family. What? When you say that, denying your needs to be strong for your family, tell me that. Tell me about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So let me give you an example. So let's say you are the only male in the home and something's going on with your siblings. So maybe they have special needs, or maybe they develop like a drug habit or a serious mental health condition. And everyone starts to work together to help this person through. Or maybe like someone gets cancer, let's say.
Okay.
Um, and as the young man, you're like, well, my dad is so occupied, he's not able to provide for the family because he's dealing with this or this. So I'm going to be strong for the family. I'm not going to talk about how scared I am, how worried I am, what I need, and you
Yeah.
suppress that. Oh, what? I'm
Mm.
fine. I'm totally fine. Let's talk about you. Don't worry about me. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then perhaps you develop the habit of, I know I did, of not
Mm-hmm.
learning how to communicate, perhaps, or feeling that it was
Right.
okay to be stressed out, or it to, I guess, to
Right.
communicate that in a healthy manner, right? Um,
Right. Totally.
yeah. Another post that you have that, again, I'm looking at over here is, and
Mm-hmm.
it's normalize men. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that. And it again resonated with me, you know, being, in my 40s. Fortunately, I was like, I need to start figuring out how to express my emotions, how to cry, how to check in with another, how to ask for help. That's so
Mm-hmm.
hard. So maybe talk to that for a minute. Normalize men.
Yeah. So the post, it says normalize men asking for help, checking in on each other, crying, sharing their feelings, practicing self care, and having fears and doubts, right? So I think that it, again, it comes back to just who are we? We're just human beings, right?
Yeah.
So this concept of men having to hide their emotions, be strong, that vulnerability is a weakness, those are all just societal constructs that we've taken on. But they're really harmful, right? Because we're social beings and we need each other and we ask each other for help, right? Checking in on each other, that makes you feel like you're wanted, like you belong. Crying, this one is a really interesting one because crying is an emotional release. And in fact, when we cry, is research to suggest that it can actually help your body bounce back into a place of equilibrium. But we suppress that, right? Sharing feelings, same thing. So having fears and doubts, like if you don't talk about that, then nobody really can reach out to you to help. Maybe it gets to the point where you're suppressing it so much that you don't even realize it yourself, right?
Yeah.
So it's just, I think that as someone who identifies as female, I'm very grateful that I have this space with other females to talk about feelings and to share insecurities. And with men, a lot of times I don't see that. And I think it can be very detrimental for your mental health because you have no one to talk to and emotions need somewhere to go, but they're all suppressed in, or, it comes out in other ways, like working too much, drinking, gambling, shopping, performance, right?
Yes,
so,
yes. Good. Yes, thank you for that.
So you're like, oh, I can resonate with that. It's like, is that what you're,
Yeah, I think in my sort of the arc for me was I've been lucky to a good portion of my life to be on a growth trajectory, let's say. But I definitely think, at some point as a male, I was taking in more emotions than I was letting out. So I was, building for that pop. And then at some point it leveled out. So I was taking in as much as I was letting out, but I still had a whole bunch of pent up emotions for a lifetime of these seemingly non-traumatic things, right? And so when I hit my 40s, it was like, divorce. Both my parents died in rapid succession. Career upheaval, and then I had another failed relationship, and just it was like the right. And so I spent a lot of time, I just say by the grace of God, finding healthy ways to cry, finding that safe space to, I found community where it was okay as a male to cry and cry a lot, right? And so that really served me, and then started asking for help. And I think that can be hard as an A-type male. It can be hard to ask for help. So
totally.
I don't mean to take this over, but I think that leads us to a great point. If you've got a guy like me who's in his 40s, let's say, or and I go through a divorce, and one of my kids is like not acting like I want, which can be stressor, and that can feel traumatic. Both my parents died, and then financial stress and more failed relationships, and it became evident to me that my work my way through it, find more success, earn more money, whatever it was no longer going to work. I needed different tools. I needed new tools, right? So given that scenario, my question to you is, thinking of technology as a tool, because you're clearly in tune with that. There we go. I know there's an app you recommend called Mooditude, right?
Yes.
And then I think you're also proficient in some CBT, some cognitive behavior therapy.
Yeah.
So thinking of those sorts of modalities, what are the exact next steps you would offer someone like me? So I knew I would be headed in the new right direction, that I would have positive momentum towards getting my life back on track.
Wow. So such a great question, but also such a loaded question, right? Because I just have so much to say.
Good.
So I don't even know where to start. Yeah, like yeah. So how about we talk about like basically how our inner core beliefs are created, right? So we
Okay.
kind of touched on this before, where we were talking about how our relationships with the people that we grow up with, like our parents, they form certain core beliefs that we have, right? So there are many more than this, but there's three main ones that I see and that are taught in the CBT framework. So the first one is that I'm unlovable.
Okay.
The second one is that I'm worthless. And the third one is that I'm helpless. So this is all operating on a subconscious level. So we all have some of these core beliefs. You have one or multiple, and then there's other ones, right? So as a human, you develop compensatory strategies. So for example, one of my core beliefs is that I'm worthless. So I grew up around parents who were quite invalidating. They were Asian immigrants, just cold, right? Never really praised me or told me they
Yes.
loved me. So me as a young girl, I'm like, I'm unlovable and I'm worthless. So what did I do? I achieved so much. I just tried
Yeah.
so hard, right? Because that's
Yeah.
how I got approval from my parents. Not
Mm.
just a good morning, Amy, I love you. Just like, oh, okay, you got a A+, good job. And I'm like, yes, this is the love I need. So anyways,
Okay.
okay, so that gets ingrained, and then I develop a compensatory strategy. So for me, it was working really hard. For some people, it may be the opposite, right? Being really hyper vigilant of cues that you don't belong, for example, reassurance seeking, whatever it is, there are behaviors that you do to protect yourself from coming face to face with that core belief, right?
Mm. Mm. Okay.
So then that can be destructive, right? So I would say one of the most important tools at first is to become aware of what you're thinking.
Mm.
Because when we become aware of what we're thinking, we can identify the patterns. And when we look at the patterns, we can start to piece together what our core beliefs might be. And then that's when the actual work happens, is we have to heal that core belief, right?
Mhm.
Because we have thousands of thoughts a day. That's the premise of CBT.
And so quickly,
And yeah,
cognitive behavioral therapy, right? That's CBT
yes,
stands for. Yes. Cool.
yes. So let me give you actually, the audience, a brief overview of what CBT is. Do you
Yeah.
think that would be helpful? Okay.
Absolutely.
So
Thank you.
cognitive behavioral therapy. So there's thoughts, then there's behaviors, and then there's feelings. And they're all connected. So if I told you right now to picture a purple elephant, would you be able to do that?
Yes, ma'am.
And if I asked you to clap twice, would you be able to do that?
Yes. Oops. One
Now,
extra.
nice. And if I asked you to stop feeling depressed, anxious, and doubtful of yourself right now, would you be able to do that?
Probably not. No.
Right. Yeah. So our feelings are harder to change, but what we
Mm.
can change is how we act and what we think. So if we can change those two things, because everything else is connected, then it can change our feelings. So with cognitive behavior therapy, the first step is to become aware of the thoughts we have. So when we are, let's say, walking past a group of people and they are laughing, one of the automatic thoughts you might have is, they're laughing at me. But CBT trains you to be like, whoa, 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 what, wait, I remember now, thoughts are not always real. How do I actually know they're laughing at me? Am I reading their mind? Am I making an assumption? Right? And
Yeah.
then you rephrase that thought. Well, maybe someone just told a funny joke. And that reframe thought leads to more positive feelings. Right? So do you
Yeah.
see how they're all connected? So
Yeah.
basically, you just do that over and over again. So I would say one of the most important things is to begin to actually look within yourself and be aware of your thoughts. And if you have
Yeah.
trouble doing that, one of the things that I've been taught is when you notice a sudden shift in mood, immediately ask yourself, what was I just thinking? Because our thoughts trigger our emotions most of the time. So if
Okay.
you're sitting there and then all of a sudden you just feel like, oh, I feel a little anxious or sad, just ask yourself, what was I just thinking? And that automatic thought is a clue of what your core belief is. And you just do that over and over again and look for
Can you give
patterns.
me a quick example of that? Of like in action, or for you or for me, or
What do you
like,
mean in action?
or like give me a real life example of that. I know you did with of like perhaps recently you noticed that shift in feeling, and
Oh,
so
yes.
yeah.
Yes, yes. Okay, so yeah, so me and my partner, we were just hanging out and he was doing his own thing, I was doing my own thing. And then I noticed that the sense of like dread almost. I was like, what was I just thinking? And I thought for a second. And my thought was that um, he is purposely avoiding me because he doesn't love me anymore,
Okay.
right? So
Yes.
then instead of picking a fight or, trying to act out, I just took a step back and was like, okay, let's challenge this thought. What evidence do I have? What evidence am I missing? What's an alternative explanation? Am
Yeah.
I reading his mind? So I didn't act on that thought. Turns out he was just tired from work and had a bad day. But it's interesting because I had that automatic thought. And where did that thought come from? My core belief, right?
Yeah.
Of being unlovable, of being worthless. So your core belief is always firing off these automatic thoughts. They shape the way you view the world,
Yeah.
right? And if we leave the thoughts unchecked, they will take over your life.
Okay, cool. So
Yeah.
you're strategically, or I don't know if strategically is the right word, you're training yourself to catch the thoughts, and then evaluate like the trail of that thought. Or am I saying that right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the Mooditude app, whenever you have a triggering thought, you can open the app and you can rate how you're feeling. You can write what you were thinking about and the specific topic. So was it relationship, work, family that was triggering you? And
Yeah.
then it tracks it all for you so then you can look at it over time and, look for those patterns. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So um I'm just looking at notes I was taking. So
Mm-hmm.
become aware of what you're thinking,
Yeah.
was sort of step one, shall we say. And
Yeah.
it sounds like for me that's even inventory that, write it down, get used to like literally like, all right, what was I thinking, what are my thoughts? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. As most of the time, we go through life on autopilot, right? Have you
Yeah.
ever, you walk down a flight of stairs and you're like, how did I get here? Why am I here? It's
Yeah.
because your brain's just chattering. It's just, you're in there and we're
Yeah.
thinking about the past and future. We're very rarely in the present moment, actually looking at your feet going down the steps, right? You
Yeah.
just end up on a different flight of your house. You're like, what the heck? How did I get here?
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Or not cool, but cool that we can change that. um so you have your MA, which is your master's.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And working on your doctorate. And so you've been pretty deep in this sort of field for, I don't know, what, 5, 10 years, something like that?
In the graduate program, about 5 years, yeah, and then
Yeah.
4 years for undergrad.
Yeah. And so there's studies backing up CBT, I'm assuming, cognitive behavioral therapy. And then a little bit of work can lead to profound shifts. That's my question. Is that, or that's a statement? Is that true?
A little bit of work can lead to profound shifts. I would say that that's a tricky question. It really depends on the person, right? So
Okay.
for some people, they are more open to exploring the thoughts that they have.
Mm.
But there also are people who are really afraid of their own thoughts, right? or they are not honest with themselves, which is okay, right? So for those folks, it may be harder to monitor their own thinking, right?
Mm.
And come face to face with what they're thinking. That can be hard.
Any strategies to help with that? Like,
I would to help with being more like open to your own thinking.
yeah,
I would
yeah,
say that there would be two, right? So I would say that sometimes people are worried about exploring their own thinking because it's going to trigger an intense emotion, right? So I think that one helpful thing to think about or prepare is coping tools, right? So find what works for you to bring you from a hot moment to a cooler moment, right? So if
okay,
you notice that what you're feeling or what you're thinking is getting you quite upset and you don't want to do it anymore, I think it's important for people to have a strategy to like calm down. That might be like deep breathing, or a meditation. And then my second thing is to practice self compassion, right? So, yeah, some of the thoughts that we have about ourselves or the world can be upsetting, but our thoughts are not always real, right?
yeah,
And I think that mindfulness can be really helpful because you can monitor your thinking without really attaching to it. And you can also be compassionate and non-judgmental. So
mm.
mindfulness is an entire thing that we can probably talk about for like 3 hours, but there's a
Yes,
lot of resources online. And I think that mindfulness will not only help people be more compassionate and non-judgmental, but I think it will also help you notice your thoughts even more, right? Because it's
yeah,
the practice of awareness.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the more we confront, and I don't know if confront's the right word, or just bring awareness to our thoughts, the more
Mm-hmm.
they hold less weight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Totally. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I mean,
And
our entire identity. I mean, Eckhart Tolle always talks about this. It's like our entire identity is basically just stories, and stories are just a string of words and pictures,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So we can let go of that.
Yes. I want to ask, I've got two things, and I'm thinking I had an idea for the advanced bonus session that everybody's doing. Um, and I'm thinking, and maybe you can tell me now if you think this is worth talking about, but I think
Mm-hmm.
where as parents, one thing that I noticed, like when both my parents died, I went through a divorce, financial upheaval, like I was having to move houses, lots of
Mm-hmm.
chaos. And I had two young boys, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, it really hit me. I was like, oh my God, they went through that with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think in hindsight, I could have. What I want you to maybe address, and I think we should save it for the bonus session, and you can tell me if you think it's worth talking about. And I wrote it down. Um, is what's it important for a parent to be cognizant of for their kids, or how do you nurture or hold space or help kids deal with, I know this is a broad topic and loaded, but it's like I think as parents when we're going through hard times, I'll speak for me as a parent when I was going through hard times, how do I hold space for my kids? What do you think about that as kind
Mm-hmm.
of
Yeah, I love that topic so much. I mean, my training is in youth, like working with youth. So yeah, I would love to talk about that.
yeah, I think that would be awesome. And I think it would be very useful because I think there's a lot of us men in our
Mm-hmm.
40s or what have you who we're a little self-centered.
Right, right, yes.
Said
Well,
with love.
not only self-centered, but also modeling what they think society, like wants men to be. So
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
Awesome. So before we hit stop and get to that though, I'm curious, and go ahead, you're going to write down a note. It looks like, um,
Oh well, I was just writing down what I'm going to talk about in the
yeah,
bonus session.
perfect. So I'm curious like you, what do you think it is that draws your Instagram account or your doodled wellness clearly is a powerful a powerful place for people to go, and it's drawing people in, and it's clearly a catalyst for change and goodness and stuff. And what what do you think it is? What, just like briefly, what do you think it is? What do you think is coming through there? Or does that question make sense? Or
it definitely makes sense, but it's a hard question because sometimes, to be honest, I'm like, I don't even know. Like, I'm just putting it together because this is just me, right? But I mean, if I can step outside of like myself as the creator and look at it, I would say that it's the colors and the way that it's presented is bright and friendly and non-intimidating, that it almost lowers like a layer of defensiveness down. And I don't know if that's true. I haven't done like a study on it or anything like that. But I mean, I try to make content that's, affirming and positive, and that fits the color scheme. But then sometimes I talk about some stuff that really does invite people to do some self-reflection, and what they may find, or what that I'm inviting them, where I'm inviting them to go, may be a hard place to go, right? But then while they are on the feed and looking at it, I still think that it's very bright and just warm and inviting. So I just think it's a happy place. And I think it's because I actually do believe in the potential for people to flourish and to unlearn what they have learned, like uncondition the conditioning of their brain. I really do feel like that's possible, and I want more and more people to realize that.
Oh, I love that. That's a beautiful answer. Thank you so much for that. And as I, it's fun to like click on a post and sort of look at the who's interacting with you, and it seems like, which I think is super cool, is a pretty broad spectrum of people. Would you say that that's true?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, that's okay. And I also think that one thing that I've noticed too is that more and more teens are noticing the feed, because it is quite, I don't want to say childish, but maybe playful. Yeah. And I think that's like, I'm just so grateful and honored for them to be there, because at that point in our lives, we're just so malleable, and there's just so much proactive work to be done.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Amy, we're gonna end. I think that's a beautiful place to end round one. So if this interview with Amy Tran was fantastic, and you want to get even more content from Amy, which is going to be amazing, I already know the bonus session is going to be beautiful. Upgrade to the all access pass for that bonus interview. And Amy, any final thoughts to share that we did not get a chance to cover?
No, but I'll leave everyone with a quote, which is, awareness is the first step towards healing.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Amy. This has been a ton of fun. Round one. I'm very excited for round two. And a reminder to everybody, you can find Amy at Doodled, that's with an ED, Doodled Wellness.com, and Doodled Wellness on Instagram. And we'll see everybody in the VIP section.
Ciao.
Thank you for spending time with me today. As someone who is committed to growth and service to this world, I so appreciate your willingness to come with me, go within, and serve our world through change. If you found value in this podcast and you know someone who can use this message, share this episode with them. Share it so our mission can be achieved one episode at a time. And of course, subscribe so you can hear more. And lastly, for more resources on what has helped me on my journey and can help you on yours, go to belove.media/resources. That's BELOVE.media/resources. Thank you again for listening.